In this lesson, we're going to finish up the cylinder. Alright, so let's go ahead and continue where we left off. We want to take this bit of detail that we had created in the last lesson, and we want to duplicate that around the cylinder. So to do this, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grow out my polygon selection and just have these polygons selected here. Now with those selected, I'm going to turn off the edge constraints, so make sure that's set to none. And then I'm going to hold down Shift and drag that out just a little bit in the X direction so it separates. Now this is going to bring up your clone part of mesh dialog, and we want to make sure that this is part of its own object. Okay, so let's just simply hit OK on that, turn off polygon mode, and select that new object that we just created. Now let's go to our Hierarchy tab, Effect Pivot Only, and center that to the object, just so it's easier to move. Now what I'll do is go ahead and move that back in the X direction to where it's overlapping on top of my cylinder again. And it should kind of poke through just barely, and that should be fairly close to the surface. We don't have to be perfect, but at least close. Now what I want to do is I want to duplicate this on my cylinder. Now in order for this to line up with the rest of the cylinder properly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change its pivot point. So let's go ahead and go to the Hierarchy tab again, Effect Pivot Only, and then we're going to align that to the cylinder. So click on the cylinder, go ahead and change the X and Z position. Let's turn off the Y. We're not absolutely needing that, and we'll hit OK. So now you'll see that its pivot point is centered on the cylinder. Now that has happened, let's turn off the Effect Pivot Only, and let's simply rotate that. Let's rotate it 60 degrees. Okay. Now make sure that your angle snap is turned on in order for that to work. Now what we'll do is go ahead and hold down Shift and then rotate that another 60 degrees. But this time, instead of making 5 copies, let's just make 4, because we already have one part of the mesh already created. So we just need 5 more. Let's hit OK on that, and you can see that that has been duplicated right here to the end. Now what we need to do is go ahead and select our cylinder. Let's isolate that for a moment, and let's go into polygon mode and get rid of those polygons that are going to be replaced with that new detail. So we're just going to sit here and delete these, selecting all of those. Make sure that you're selecting the polygons on the flat part, not over the top of the inset. Okay, just like this. And we have just a couple more to do here. Go. And then we'll do this one and delete it out. Now, whenever we go ahead and say turn off the isolation, you should see those pieces there. Now I want to go ahead and select all of those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off polygon mode. I'm going to select everything in the scene and then deselect the frame of the gun. Then I'll turn on isolation, so that way I'm just working with the cylinder and those new detailed pieces. Now what we need to do is select the cylinder and attach the new pieces, the new detail. So to do this, let's simply come in and say attach, and let's attach the new pieces. Now it looks as though they are one solid object, but they are still different elements because they are not physically welded to the cylinder. So let's go ahead and do that now. This can be pretty simple to do. Let's go to vertex mode, and let's just select the vertices along the back here. Go to your left view to make that a little bit easier, and we'll just select these vertices right here. Okay. Now with all of those selected, what we'll do is we'll simply use weld, but use the weld settings. With the settings up, let's go ahead and drop down the threshold on that to 0.01. Do a quick check to make sure that no vertices have been accidentally welded to one another. So it looks like everything's good except for right here in these corners. So we'll try to drop that down as far as we can go. Let's try to do 0.005. Okay. It's showing here that 50 of those vertices are going to be welded. So we have at the beginning 856 vertices, but after we do the weld it's going to be 806. So we know that those vertices that are on those corners are being welded because they're right on top of one another. Simply hit OK on that, and that should weld. To do a quick check of that, let's go ahead and go to Views, X View, and then Overlapping Vertices. Go ahead and update that, and you'll see here that it shows that there are a couple of vertices that are overlapping. However, notice where they're at. They're right here on these corners. So we really don't have to worry about that. So everything else is looking good. Another way to check this is to go to element mode, and if you select the cylinder, you'll notice that the other pieces are coming along with that. So it's all one element now. Alright, great. Let's go ahead and finish off this cylinder. Next thing that I want to do is I want to go to edge mode, and I'm going to select these edges right here on the inside. And then I'm going to go to modify selection and similar. That's going to select other edges that are similar to those that I already had selected. This is a great way of making selections. It doesn't always work, it's not perfect, but it does cut down some time sometimes. Now let's go ahead and use connect. Let's connect it with 2 segments, and then we're going to adjust that pinch. We're going to bring that up. Take it pretty close to the edge here. Let's go to about 98. Hit OK on that. And now what I want to do is I want to go to polygon mode, hitting 4 on the keyboard. I'm going to select this polygon, hold shift, select the next one in line. That's going to select that ring of polygons. And let's go ahead and use modify selection and similar. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually scale these polygons in, and then just give it a little bit more thickness. So to do this, let's go to our scale tool, and I'm going to scale by my local normal, because what that will do is allow me to just scale one set, and it will scale those in their own local direction. Now for this to work properly, because it is kind of turning in a 360-degree direction, I need to scale it in all 3 directions first. So grab it right in the middle of the scale tool. Now you'll notice that it's pushing that back in. Now what I want to do is get rid of that movement in the Y, and I want to just kind of counter that. So I'm going to scale that back in the Y direction, but let's do it in our view direction. So once I scale that, you'll notice that it comes back out where it should be. All right, good. So notice that we've created just a little bit of thickness in that cylinder there. Great. All right, so now that we have that, let's take a look at what it looks like with Turbo Smooth on. So let's type in Turbo Smooth, and you'll see that it comes up. We can add a little bit more to our iterations, turn on isoline display. It's pretty close to being there. We need to go ahead and add a loop right here on the end. So to do that, let's go ahead and show end result, go to edge mode, and go to Swift Loop, and try to create a loop right outside on the edge here. Maybe a little difficult. You may have to zoom out or something just to kind of help with that, but there we go. Left click on that, and there we go. We've retained that volume there, and now we've got our cylinder. Now we're not quite done yet. We need one more bit of information. We need these indentions here to be a little bit sharper. So to do that, I'm going to go to edge mode, and I'm going to select this edge, hold down shift, and select the next one in line. Okay. And what that's going to do is it's going to select all of those edges all the way around. Then what I can do is use connect, and let's just do let's do one connection on that. So one segment, and let's slide that toward the top. Notice how that's getting nice and creased there. Looking pretty good. Let's go up to maybe about 68 or so, negative 68, and then hit OK. There we go. So we now have our cylinder looking really nice. We may bump up those iterations up to 3. And there we go. So now we have our high poly cylinder. The next thing that we'll need to do from here is go ahead and get rid of those extra pieces there. And then we also need to start creating the pieces that connect it to the frame. And we'll get started with that next.